My dear brothers and sisters, we're going to talk about how we've become a nation of strangers. We've estranged ourselves from others, from work, from nature, and from ourselves. How sad are your streets, America? No one speaks. No one talks. When I walk along, how rare it is for someone to smile and say, "Good morning." Facebook is a symptom. All the likes on Facebook cannot compare with the warmth of a smile and a word of kindness and encouragement. We are overwhelmed with things, yet we're impoverished. Witness the silence, the deafening silence of the streets. How sad it is to see people hunched over their cell phones. This is the iPhone, the iPod, the iPad generation. They are the young Americans born after 1995, the first to spend their entire adolescence with smartphones in their hands. They spend more time in front of screens and less time interacting with one another than any previous generation. They communicate primarily through social media or text, not in person. Is it any wonder then that they appear paranoid? Danger seems to lurk at every turn in the form of ideas that don't square with their beliefs. And it's not only on college campuses, it's everywhere. How fearful, how frightened we've become. And with this has been the increasing polarization. The top 10% of households in America hold 70% of the nation's wealth, while the bottom 50% hold 2%. The wealthiest 10% of American households own 89% of all U.S. stocks. No wonder people are becoming increasingly desperate. No wonder that millions of Americans are quitting their jobs. It's called the Great Resignation. Americans don't hate work. They hate the workplace. Many of them have had their fill of the lunarscape, the glaciation, the drear of corporate culture. Consider, on the other hand, a family farmer. He is the true husband of his soil, plants, and animals. They are an expression of his intentionality and devotion. Contrast this with modern corporate agriculture's crops, which are a monoculture, and its animals are raised in unspeakable conditions of filth and stench associated with what they call contained animal feeding operations. The animals are but factors of production. The corporate farmer, too, is but a factor of production. And then there's estrangement from ourselves. The skyrocketing number of deaths of the spear, which include record numbers of deaths from opioid overdoses. This is a cry of a society that's cut off from its roots. Loneliness and isolation are killing us. Tragically enough, millions of Americans, unable to face the moral and spiritual poverty of their lives, find no escape but into drugs and alcohol. According to Mike Adams, the tireless health ranger, a shocking study published in the Annals of Internal Medicine finds that 38% of Americans, 38% were prescribed addictive opioid painkillers in 2015, with millions more on psychiatric drugs, antidepressants, statin drugs, and chemotherapy. It's no exaggeration to say that America is drugged out. A whooping 5% of American adults are currently abusing prescription opioids, and 1% of American adults are chemically addicted to opioids. The number of overdose deaths from pain medications has increased by more than 300% since 1999. According to the CDC, opioid drugs are killing 33,000 Americans every year. The opioid crisis has been making headlines, but then there's one of longer term, going way, way back, namely alcoholism. 1 in 8 Americans, or nearly 13% of the population, struggle with alcoholism. From 2006 to 2010 alone, excess drinking led to 88,000 deaths and 2.5 million years of potential life lost each year. In addition, excessive alcohol use increases your risk of chronic disease, including heart disease, liver disease, and cancer. More than a third of American adults are obese. By 2025, just 3 years from now, they will reach 45% of the population obese. There have always been obese people, but never in the proportions we are seeing. This is something new, without precedent. Closely associated with the epidemic in obesity is the epidemic of diabetes. The world is facing an unending march of diabetes, which affects 1 in 11 adults worldwide. According to statistics from the World Health Organization, diabetes rates quadrupled. Diabetes rates quadrupled between 1980 and 2014, from 108 million to 422 million. World Health Organization officials warn that diabetes rates will continue to climb until drastic action is taken. Never before in American history has there been anything like the epidemic of obesity, the epidemic of depression, the epidemic of opioids, and the epidemic of suicides. The birth rate, brothers and sisters, has plunged to a new all-time low. It's the lowest it's ever been since they started keeping records. And this amidst a degree of social isolation and loneliness that has never before been seen. And then there's estrangement from nature. Let's start with bugs. Nothing shows as dramatically how far we are removed, in that insects throughout the world are declining at a dramatic rate. Overall, the total mass of insects is falling by a shocking rate of 2.5% a year. According to an expert, it is very rapid. In 10 years, you'll have a quarter less. In 50 years, only half left. And in 100 years, you'll have none. Pesticides and habitat loss are the main culprits behind these depressing numbers. At one point, all food was grown organically on family farms in concert with nature and surrounding ecosystems. All this has changed with the coming of industrial agriculture based upon chemicals and monoculture, growing acre of only one crop at a time. In other words, a system of agriculture based upon synthetic fertilizers, pesticides and fungicides with very little diversity. Vast tracts across the United States are planted with corn and soybeans. And worldwide, monoculture has played a major role in the decline of insects. Ecosystems, species, wild populations, and local varieties and breeds of domesticated plants and animals are shrinking, deteriorating, or vanishing. The essential, interconnected web of life on Earth is getting smaller and increasingly frayed, said Joseph Settel, a German biologist and co-chair of a UN-backed report. So we've seen the estrangement from self, the estrangement from work, the estrangement from nature, and the estrangement from others. An image emerges of an America in its 246th year, drugged out, obese, inebriated, suicidal, and imploding. Yet, brothers and sisters, I am convinced that you will bring us through. You who began with the revelation of aliveness in your food will carry us on to aliveness in every aspect of our lives. You will see us through to renewal, regeneration, recreation, and redemption. You will realize Abraham Lincoln's new birth of freedom and build here an edible schoolyard for the American spirit. Thank you for allowing me to share a few thoughts. Let us go forward. Your comments and suggestions are treasured by us. Thank you indeed.